My sister had been missing for 15 days. When I finally went to her house, the place looked ransacked. I was about to call the cops when I heard a noise coming from the closet. My blood ran cold. What I discovered inside changed everything. I thought I'd seen everything the world could throw at me. Years in the military, deployments, danger, but nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for the call that tore my world apart. What if the person you loved most disappeared, and the only thing they left behind was a terrified child whispering, "Mom told me to hide"? For 15 days, my sister Lana went silent. Not a call, not a text, not a single word from anyone in our tiny town. At first, I tried to rationalize it. A bad signal, her stubborn streak, that fierce independence that made you both proud and absolutely furious. But by day 10, the excuses were gone. Something was wrong. I was still on active duty, thousands of miles away, when my phone rang. It was Mrs. Lell, our neighbor back in Ashburn, Nevada. Mrs. Lell, who once chased a bear off her trash cans with a broom, sounded nervous. "Annie," she said, her voice shaking, "I haven't seen your sister in over a week. Her mail's piling up, her car's still in the driveway, and there's this smell." That word hit me harder than a rifle shot. Within hours, my emergency leave was approved. My CO didn't ask questions. I didn't offer details. Soldiers don't need reasons to go home when family's involved. I threw my duffel bag in the back of my Jeep, grabbed a gas station coffee that tasted like melted rubber, and started the 6-hour drive north. Ashburn was nothing special. A few blocks of old houses, one gas station, a diner still playing 80s music, and miles of dry desert stretching beyond. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone's business, which made the silence about Lana all the more terrifying. When I pulled onto her street, everything looked the same, yet the air felt heavy, like the whole neighborhood was holding its breath. Her front door was cracked open. I froze. My training kicked in before my emotions did. Ignition off. Slow exit. Scan the area. The porch light flickered. A pile of unopened mail lay by the mat. Her once vibrant flower beds were just dirt and weeds. Inside, the air hit me first. Stale. Warm. Thick. The kind of air that screams something went terribly wrong. The living room was a disaster. Couch overturned, cushions slashed, papers scattered. A photo frame lay face down, glass shattered. I picked it up carefully. Lana, with her son Connor, last Christmas. He was 7. The house was silent, save for a faint ticking. Her old wall clock from college. "Lana." I called out. Nothing. Louder. "Connor." Still nothing. I moved through each room like clearing a house overseas, controlled, methodical, heart pounding in my throat. The kitchen was worse. Cabinet doors ajar, fridge open, a plate smashed in the sink. A chair lay on its side, one leg splintered. And then, there was a dark stain on the tile near the counter. Not enough to panic, but enough to make my mind spiral into every worst-case scenario. Then, from the hallway, I heard it. Faint. Uneven. Breathing. I froze. My hand instinctively went to my sidearm, before I remembered it was locked in the car. I moved closer, the sound leading me to Lana's bedroom. The door was half open, the room beyond a hurricane of torn sheets, a broken lamp, dresser drawers dumped onto the floor. And then came a soft whimper. From the closet. I approached slowly, every muscle in my body tense. "Hello," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "It's Anne. I'm not going to hurt you." The only answer was a shaky inhale, then silence. I took a deep breath and opened the closet door. At first, I saw nothing. Then my eyes adjusted. A small figure crouched in the corner, behind a pile of clothes. Connor. He was pale, filthy, and trembling. His eyes, wide and unfocused, darted toward me like a wild animal. I knelt down slowly, hands visible, the way you approach someone in shock. "Connor," I whispered. "It's me, Aunt Anne. You're okay now." He didn't move. For a second, I thought he didn't even recognize me. Then he blinked and made a sound somewhere between a sob and a gasp. I reached forward carefully, but when my fingers brushed his arm, he flinched hard. His skin was ice cold. "Hey," I said softly. "You're safe now. No one's going to hurt you." He shook his head. Mom told me to hide," he whispered, his voice breaking. That single sentence felt like a knife twisting in my chest. I pulled him out gently, wrapping him in my jacket. His body was so light, it scared me. He must have been in there for days. He clutched his old stuffed bear, the one Lana bought him at the county fair 2 years ago. "Where's your mom?" I asked. He didn't answer. He just buried his face against me and whispered, "Don't let him come back." That was enough. I knew this wasn't some random robbery. I carried him out to the Jeep and drove straight to the nearest hospital. On the way, he didn't say a word. Just stared out the window, his reflection ghostly in the glass, eyes hollow. At the ER, doctors rushed him inside. I finally exhaled. When a nurse asked what happened, I told her the truth. I don't know yet. I sat in the hallway under buzzing fluorescent lights, replaying everything. The broken furniture. The stains. The silence. And that smell Mrs. Lell mentioned. It hadn't been the smell of death. It was something else. Chemical. Like cleaning products. Or something used to cover something up. After what felt like forever, a doctor came out. "He's stable," she said. "Dehydrated, hungry, but no major injuries. He's been through serious psychological trauma, though." "You said he was alone for days." 3, maybe 4, I said. He didn't say much. She nodded grimly. "We'll keep him overnight, but you should call the police." I already had. 2 officers showed up about 20 minutes later. Detective Merritt and a younger partner who looked like he'd just learned how to shave. Merritt had that seasoned calm I'd seen in senior officers, steady eyes, slow breathing, a voice that didn't waste words. He listened as I told him everything, from the call that made me drive up, to finding Connor in the closet. He didn't interrupt, just nodded and jotted things down in a worn notebook. When I finished, he asked, "You sure you didn't touch much in the house?" "Just the door handles and the closet," I said. "Good. We'll treat it as an active crime scene." He paused, studying me. "You're military? Army?" I nodded. "Then you already know the drill. Don't jump ahead of us. We'll find out what happened." I wanted to believe him, but I'd seen too much to trust easy reassurances. When I stepped outside the hospital, the night air felt colder than the desert had any right to be. The neon lights from the diner flickered on and off, like the world itself couldn't decide if it was still awake. I looked back through the glass at Connor. Sleeping in that hospital bed, his small hand still gripping that bear. Something in me hardened. I didn't know what had happened to my sister yet, but I knew this. I wasn't going back to base until I found out. And I wasn't letting anyone get away with it. The next morning, the sun barely made it through the blinds of that hospital room. Connor was awake, staring at the ceiling like he was somewhere else entirely. When I walked in, he didn't flinch. Just followed me with his eyes. The nurse said he hadn't said a word since I left, not even when they offered him breakfast. The tray was untouched, except for the chocolate milk. Kids always go for the chocolate milk. I pulled a chair next to his bed and sat down. "Hey, champ," I said quietly. "You did good last night. You're safe now." He didn't reply, but his fingers fidgeted with the edge of the blanket. He looked smaller than I remembered, like the fear had shrunk him. I wanted to ask him 100 questions, but Detective Merritt walked in before I could start. He looked like he hadn't slept either. He gave me a nod. "Morning, Lieutenant. We've got a team at your sister's house. You might want to come with us when you can." "I'm coming," I said. He looked at Connor. "The kid's staying here for now. We'll have someone from Child Services check on him until family arrangements are made." "I'm family," I said, sharper than I meant to. He raised a brow, like he expected that. "Then you'll be the one signing custody paperwork later," he said calmly. "But for now, let the doctors handle him. You and I have a scene to visit." I leaned close to Connor before leaving. "I'll be back soon, okay? You're safe here." He turned his head slightly, eyes glassy, voice barely a whisper. "Don't go to the house." That stopped me cold. "Why not?" He shook his head and hid under the blanket. "He'll come back." I didn't push him. I just tucked the blanket around him and left. But those words stuck to my brain like static. The drive back to the house was quiet, except for the hum of Merritt's radio. He kept his eyes on the road, one hand on the steering wheel. "You said your sister was a single mom?" "Yeah," I said. "Divorced. The dad's not in the picture." He gave a short nod. "She had anyone else in her life recently? Boyfriend, business partner, anything?" I shook my head. "Not that I know of. We weren't in touch as much lately." He looked over briefly. "Military distance." I gave a humorless laugh. "You could say that." When we pulled up to the house, the whole street looked different. Police tape across the yard. 2 squad cars. A forensics van unloading gear. Neighbors stood behind fences, pretending not to stare. I stepped out and inhaled the dry morning air. The smell that had hung in the house last night was gone. Or maybe I was just too focused to notice it now. Inside, the place looked worse in daylight. Every detail screamed chaos. The forensics team moved carefully, snapping photos, dusting surfaces. Merritt walked me through it. Signs of a struggle in the living room, he said. Broken glass, overturned furniture. We found partial prints on the doorknob and the counter. Looks like at least 2 sets. He nodded. One likely belongs to your sister. The others unidentified so far. In the kitchen, one of the techs crouched, swabbing something. Possible blood trace, she said without looking up. Merritt scribbled that down. I leaned against the wall, arms crossed. You think it's a robbery? He shook his head. No forced entry. Whoever did this, they were either let in or had a key. That sentence felt like a punch to the gut. I stared at the broken chair. Lana used to joke that she could handle anything life threw at her, but this didn't look like she'd had a chance. A younger officer walked up, holding a small evidence bag. Detective, found this behind the couch. Inside was a torn envelope with a few crumpled bills still inside. Merritt frowned. Looks like cash. Not much. Maybe $50. I noticed something else. A faint, smeared note on the back. That's my sister's handwriting, I said, pointing. The ink was half faded, but I could make out 2 words, don't trust. The rest was gone. Merritt looked up at me. Don't trust who? If I knew that, I said, we wouldn't be standing here. He pocketed the evidence bag and turned to another officer. Check bank statements. See if she had any withdrawals recently. Credit card, store accounts, anything that shows unusual activity. While the team worked, I walked down the hall toward Lana's bedroom. The closet door was still open. The faint outline of where Connor had crouched was visible on the carpet. The stuffed bear wasn't there anymore. The hospital must have let him keep it. I crouched and noticed something shiny behind a stack of boxes in the corner. I pulled it out, a small silver necklace with a compass charm. I recognized it instantly. My gift to Lana when I first deployed. So you'll find your way back, she'd said. I handed it to Merritt quietly. He examined it, then slipped it into another evidence bag. You and your sister close growing up? He asked. Close enough to fight about everything, I said. But yeah, she looked up to me. I guess I didn't do much to deserve that lately. He didn't respond. He didn't have to. By the time we left, it was close to noon. The sun was brutal. The smell of dust and old paint clung to my clothes. Merritt stopped by his car. We'll run prints, check surveillance, talk to the neighbors again. You should get some rest. Rest isn't going to help, I said. Then at least eat something. Soldiers forget that's important, too. He gave me his card and told me he'd call once they had results. I watched the forensics van pull away before heading back to the hospital. Connor was awake again when I got there, sitting cross-legged on the bed with a coloring book someone had brought him. He looked up when I walked in, but didn't smile. Did you go? He asked. Yeah. His lip trembled. Was she there? I hesitated. Nobody. Not yet. He stared down at the page, gripping the crayon tighter. The man said she'd be okay. What man? He didn't look up. The man who came that night? Mom said to hide, and then they shouted. He was mad. He broke things. My pulse quickened. Did you see him? He nodded slowly. He wore a black jacket. He smelled like gas. Gasoline. Yeah. He sniffled. He took Mom's phone. Then it got quiet. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. Do you remember what he looked like? Anything at all? Connor bit his lip. He had a scar here. He pointed to his chin. And he said something about money. He said she owed him. That was enough. I knew we weren't dealing with a random intruder. Merritt would want every word of this. I called him from the hallway and gave a quick rundown. He didn't interrupt. Just said, we'll run it through our records. Sounds like a debt collector or loan shark. When I hung up, I glanced back into the room. Connor had started coloring again, pressing too hard on the crayon until it snapped. He didn't seem to notice. I walked over, crouched beside the bed, and picked up the broken piece. Hey, I said. You're not alone anymore, okay? He didn't answer, but he leaned into me, just slightly. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Outside, the late afternoon light stretched long across the parking lot. I stood by the window, watching people come and go. The world moving on like nothing had happened. Somewhere out there, someone knew exactly what happened to Lana. Someone thought they'd get away with it. I'd seen men like that before overseas, in alleys and markets. Men who hid behind excuses and left others bleeding for it. And if this was the same kind of man, he'd learn the same lesson soon enough. The next day started with the kind of cold wind that made the whole town feel half asleep. I was sitting in the back of the precinct, coffee gone lukewarm, watching Detective Merritt pin photos of my sister's house onto a board. crime scene prints, the blood sample, the torn envelope with Lana's handwriting, all laid out like pieces of a puzzle no one wanted to finish. Bank records came back, Merritt said, flipping through a folder. Your sister withdrew close to $6,000 2 weeks ago. Cash. No trace after that. She didn't keep that kind of money lying around, I said. She ran a bookkeeping service from home. That's not exactly rolls of cash work. Merritt nodded. Which means she was paying someone. Or trying to. He handed me a photo. It showed a black SUV parked near her street the night before she went missing. Caught by a neighbor's security camera. The image was grainy, but I could make out a decal on the back window, a white falcon silhouette. You ever seen that before? He asked. I shook my head. No. But Connor mentioned a man with a scar on his chin. Smelled like gas. Maybe that's our guy. Merritt grunted. We'll run the vehicle through DMV and cross-check loan shark activity in the area. I leaned forward. Loan shark? You think my sister was mixed up in that? He hesitated. We found a burner phone in her nightstand. Texts between her and someone named Reed. No last name, no profile picture. Just a bunch of messages asking for more time to fix it. The word fix hit like a slap. Lana always said that whenever she was trying to keep a secret. Don't worry, I'll fix it. What kind of messages? I asked. He slid the printouts across the table. The last few were short, frantic. Lana, please. I just need a few days. Reed, you had your chance. You know how this works. Lana, don't come here. My son's home. Reed, that's your problem. Merritt looked up. We've traced that number to a prepaid SIM bought at a gas station off Highway 50. I rubbed my temples. So, she was in trouble and no one knew. He gave me a look that wasn't judgmental, but it stung anyway. You were overseas. Training command in Fort Lewis. She didn't tell me anything, I said quietly. Maybe she didn't want me to worry. Merritt nodded slowly, like he'd seen the same thing before. Families hiding their mess until it exploded. A young officer poked his head in. Detective, you'll want to see this. We followed him to the evidence room, where a tech was examining fingerprints lifted from the kitchen counter. We got a partial match, the tech said, zooming in on the screen. Belongs to a guy named Reed Collins. Local contractor, but also a known associate of a small-time loan operation. Multiple priors for extortion and aggravated assault. Merritt looked at me. Sound familiar? No, I said, but I'd like to meet him. Not yet, he said firmly. We'll find him, but you stay out of it. Let us handle it. I didn't argue, but he could tell I wasn't promising anything. By noon, I was back at Lana's house. The police tape still fluttered, but the scene was cleared for family entry. The air inside had lost that smell of panic, replaced by something empty, a quiet abandonment. I started picking up the mess, not to clean, but to understand. The table by the window had her planner, still open to the week she disappeared. Her neat handwriting listed ordinary things. Pick up Connor's prescription. Call water company. Meet RC. 6 p.m. Confirm payment. There it was again. RC. I pulled out my phone and searched. Reed Collins Ashburn NV. The first hit was a listing for Collins Home Improvement, a remodeling business with a dozen bad reviews, and a photo of a man who looked like he could win an argument with a bulldozer. His smile didn't reach his eyes. And yes, there was a faint scar on his chin. The caption read, Owner and contractor established 2016. I scrolled further. 2 years ago, he'd been sued for unpaid work and property damage. The case was dismissed after a private settlement. Typical. I saved the image. When I closed Lana's planner, an envelope fell out from the back cover. It was sealed with tape, labeled, only in case something happens. My throat went dry. I peeled it open carefully. Inside was a short handwritten note, dated just a week before she vanished. If you're reading this, it means I couldn't fix it. I tried to protect Connor. Please don't judge me for what I did. Reed said he'd hurt us if I didn't pay. He wants everything. The store money, the house. I can't let that happen. Take care of Connor. I love you. Lana, the handwriting trembled in places, like she'd been writing fast or afraid someone might walk in. I read it twice, then folded it back, my fingers shaking. I wasn't sure if I was angrier at her for keeping it secret or at myself for not seeing it sooner. I called Merritt immediately and read the note to him. He didn't sound surprised. That confirms it, he said. Reed Collins isn't just a suspect. He's the key. We're getting a warrant for his business records and home address. We'll find him. I hung up and looked around the house again. Every detail suddenly made sense. The broken furniture. The scattered papers. The missing phone. It wasn't random. It was desperation. She'd fought back. I sat on the edge of her bed, running my hand along the dresser, and my fingers brushed against something taped underneath the drawer. A small USB drive. I pulled it off and plugged it into my laptop. There was only one folder, Tax Files 2024. But inside were scanned documents that didn't belong to her business. Fake invoices. Wire transfers. Large cash deposits. All tied to Colin's home improvement. She'd been keeping records. Evidence. My chest tightened. Lana hadn't been just a victim. She'd been trying to expose him. I printed copies of everything and drove straight to the station. Merritt met me at the front desk, his expression unreadable. I handed him the folder. She was documenting him. Money laundering, fake clients, offshore payments. Everything. His eyes narrowed as he flipped through the pages quickly. Jesus. She was sitting on a financial bomb. Yeah, I said. And he found out. Merritt nodded grimly. We'll bring in Collins by tonight. He's not getting far. But even as he said it, I could tell he wasn't sure. Guys like Collins didn't just disappear. They prepared. When I walked out of the precinct, the sky had started to turn orange over the desert. The air smelled like heat and metal, and I caught my reflection in the glass doors, tired, tense, but determined. I wasn't thinking about regulations. Or what I was allowed to do. I was thinking about my sister writing that letter with shaking hands, probably believing no one would come for her. That wasn't going to happen again. I got in my car, started the engine, and stared down the road that led out of town. If Collins thought he could scare my family into silence, he'd underestimated the wrong damn sister. By the time the sun slipped behind the ridge, I was parked outside a place called Colin's Home Improvement. It wasn't much of a business, a rusted sign, a gravel lot, and a prefab office that looked abandoned. A single pickup sat out front, dust coating the windshield, a half-empty coffee cup still in the holder. Merritt had told me to wait for backup if I ever saw Collins, but waiting had never been one of my strengths. I stepped out, walked up to the door, and tried the handle. Locked. I circled around the side, peered through a grimy window, and saw a mess of papers scattered on a desk. The monitor was still on, its glow faint against the dusty blinds. Someone had left in a hurry. I didn't need to break in to know it. The tire tracks leading away from the lot told the story. 2 sets. One from the pickup. The other newer, from a larger vehicle, maybe a van. They led toward the old industrial park on the edge of town. Merritt's voice echoed in my head, "Let us handle it." I ignored it. I followed the trail until it disappeared into a line of storage units by the freight yard. No lights. No security cameras. Just the hum of the wind through the metal siding. I scanned each door until I found one with a fresh scrape near the latch. Someone had forced it open recently. I crouched, peered inside, and caught the faint scent of gasoline again. Inside were boxes of paint cans, toolkits, and, shoved in the corner, a safe. Its door ajar. I turned on my phone flashlight and stepped closer. Inside the safe was a neat pile of cash, maybe 10 grand, and a notebook labeled Ledger. I flipped it open. Page after page listed names, dates, and dollar amounts. It wasn't home repairs. It was extortion. Loans with interest rates that could make a mobster blush. One name jumped off the page, L. Pierce. 12K outstanding. Due immediately. My sister had been in debt to this man, but more than that, her name was circled in red ink, and under it, in a rushed scrawl, were the words, "Too risky." Problem. I heard a noise behind me, gravel crunching. I killed the light and stepped aside, pressing myself against the cold metal wall. The storage door creaked open, and 2 figures stepped in. One was tall, heavyset. The other smaller, twitchier. The taller man flicked on a flashlight. "You sure he left it here?" the smaller one whispered. "Yeah. He said he dropped the files and burned the place tomorrow. We grabbed the ledger tonight. It's done." I stayed still. Slow breathing. Heart steady. They moved toward the safe, the taller one cursing under his breath when he saw it open. F*******. Someone's been here. That was my cue to leave. I slipped out the side door, keeping low, but my boot hit a loose wrench. The clink echoed. Both flashlights swung toward me. "Hey, who's there?" I didn't stick around to explain. I ran. Their footsteps pounded behind me, one yelling, "Stop. You don't want to make this worse." Which was usually what people said right before making it worse. I cut between the storage rows and ducked behind a shipping container, forcing my breathing to slow. The footsteps stopped. A voice said, "Forget it. Grab the book." We'll deal with her later. Her. They knew who I was. By the time I made it back to my car, my hands were shaking, not from fear, but fury. I called Merritt. He picked up on the second ring. "Detective, I found something," I said, my voice tight. "A ledger. Storage unit near the freight yard. Collins's operation. 2 men showed up while I was there." "You went alone?" His voice sharpened. "I'm not great with patience." He sighed. "You could have been killed. Stay put. We'll send a unit." "I'm already gone," I said. "And I've got photos." I hung up before he could finish. At home, I spread out the pictures across the kitchen table. The ledger pages. The cash. The list of names. It was bigger than I thought. This wasn't just about one loan or one family. This was a full-blown money laundering ring. Collins was fronting construction jobs to funnel dirty money through fake invoices, and Lana had stumbled right into it. She'd been their accountant, probably unknowingly at first, until she realized what they were doing. The tax files on her drive weren't hers. They were his. I offed a glass of water and realized my hands were still trembling. The part of me trained to assess threat scenarios kicked in. Motive. Pattern. Resources. Collins had both money and muscle. He wasn't working alone. And if 2 of his guys already knew who I was, that meant I didn't have long before they came looking. The knock at my door that night didn't help. I froze mid-step. Another knock, louder this time. "Miss Pierce," a voice called. "Detective Merritt." I cracked the door open an inch. It was him, tie loose, expression worn, eyes sharper than usual. "You left out a few details in your call," he said dryly. "You want to tell me why my team found a half-open crime scene with fresh footprints?" "Because waiting gets people killed," I said. He exhaled through his nose, clearly fighting the urge to argue. "You're lucky those men didn't see your face. We pulled camera footage from a nearby gas station. They're Collins's guys. Both have records. Names, Jack Vargo and Luis Carver. Muscle for hire. Collins used them before." I leaned against the counter. "So, what's next?" "Next," Merritt said, "we issue a warrant for Collins's arrest and lock down every property he owns. If your sister's alive, he's our best shot at finding her." He hesitated, then added, "You need to stay out of this. You're too close." I laughed, bitter. "Detective, she was my sister." "Too close" stopped mattering the moment I found her kid hiding in a closet. He studied me for a second, then nodded. "Then do me one favor. If you find something before we do, you call me first. No cowboy moves." "Can't promise that," I said. He half smiled. "Didn't think you would." After he left, I sat back down at the table. The ledger stared back at me like a silent accusation. I picked up the photo of Lana and Connor from the shattered frame. She looked happy, genuinely happy, the way people do right before everything falls apart. There was still one thing missing. Proof that Collins had gone after her personally. The ledger showed money. The text showed threats. But I needed a connection, a location, a date, something that tied him directly to that night. I opened her laptop again and dug deeper. Hidden in her email drafts was an unsent message. Timestamped 11:42 p.m. The night she disappeared. To Detective M at Ashburn PD. Subject, urgent. Collins's records. Message, Detective, I have everything. He found out I copied the files. If something happens to me, check the cabin by Mill Creek. That's where they meet. Please hurry. The cursor blinked at the end of the last sentence. Frozen mid-word. She'd been interrupted before she could hit send. I stared at the screen, the hum of the fridge suddenly deafening. Mill Creek. 10 miles north of town. I grabbed my keys, shoved the printed copy of the email into my pocket, and headed for the door. If Collins had been there once, maybe he still was. And if he wasn't, there'd be something. Tracks, evidence, anything that could tell me what really happened that night. The drive was dark and quiet. The desert stretched out endlessly on either side of the road, my headlights cutting through the dust, catching nothing but shadows and scrub. When I finally turned off onto the dirt path that led toward the creek, I killed the engine and listened. Crickets. Wind. And somewhere in the distance, a faint metallic clatter. I reached for my flashlight, took a breath, and started walking toward the sound. The closer I got to Mill Creek, the colder the air felt. The road turned from dirt to mud, tires slipping in patches where the rain had hit days earlier. I parked beneath a cluster of pine trees and killed the engine. The place was quiet. Too quiet for somewhere that was supposed to be a meeting spot. Just the sound of the wind brushing through the branches and the soft rush of water in the distance. The cabin wasn't hard to find. It sat low against the slope. A small wooden structure with peeling paint and a porch that sagged like it had given up trying to stand straight. The front door was locked, but the lock was new. Shiny. Cheap. Recently installed. I stepped around the back, found a cracked window, and pushed it open just enough to slip inside. The smell hit first: mold, stale smoke, and something chemical. Bleach, maybe. Inside, the place looked abandoned. One table, 2 chairs, a metal filing cabinet, and an ashtray full of cigarette butts. On the table sat a single object, a mug, half full of coffee, still warm. Someone had been here. I froze, listening. No footsteps. No voices. Just the soft drip of water from a leaky pipe. I took a step closer to the table and noticed a few sheets of paper beside the mug. They were damp, edges curled, ink smudged. The top page was a printout of a bank transfer, Colin's home improvement, to an account under a fake name. The same offshore account Lana had documented. Another page was handwritten. The same messy scrawl I recognized from her planner. I held it up to the light. If you ever find this place, it means he knows. I didn't have time to finish what I started. The files, the ledger, everything he uses to hide money, it's there. Here. Please don't come after him. Take Connor and leave. I know you won't, but I have to say it anyway. My throat tightened. Even in a note meant for the worst-case scenario, she'd still known exactly how I'd react. I know you won't. She was right. The floor creaked behind me. I spun around. A man stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the fading light. Tall. Heavy-set. Hands raised slightly. He looked about 40, maybe 50, wearing a work jacket streaked with grease. His face was rough, his chin marked with a thin white scar. Lieutenant Pierce, he said calmly. You shouldn't be here. Collins, I said, voice flat. You've got a lot of nerve showing up. He smirked. Funny, I could say the same thing. You break into private property, go through my stuff. That's not exactly by the book for a soldier, is it? This isn't about rules, I said. It's about what you did to my sister. He took a step forward. Slow. Deliberate. Your sister made a mistake. She got involved in something she didn't understand. I tried to help her, told her to walk away. She didn't listen. I clenched my fists. You mean she didn't pay you fast enough? His eyes hardened. She stole from me. That's a lie. She took the files. He snapped. Do you have any idea what that put me in? The people I work with don't like mistakes. She panicked. And now look where we are. So you killed her. He shook his head, almost casually. If I wanted her dead, you'd have found a body by now. The way he said it made my skin crawl. Not if she's dead, but if I wanted her dead. Intentional. Precise. I took a step closer. Where is she? Collins tilted his head slightly, that smug smile never fading. You're asking the wrong questions. You should be asking yourself why she didn't tell you anything. Maybe she knew what you'd do. He turned to leave, but I moved faster. I grabbed him by the collar, slamming him against the doorframe. Where is she? His hand shot up, gripping my wrist, hard enough to hurt. Your first mistake. For a moment, we stood locked in that standoff. The kind that could go bad fast. Then, headlights flashed outside. Collins shoved me back, straightened his jacket, and walked out into the open. I followed, staying just behind him. A dark sedan had pulled up. 2 men stepped out, the same ones I'd seen at the storage unit, Vargo and Carver. Collins waved them off with a flick of his hand. It's fine. She's leaving. Like hell I am, I said. Merritt's voice cut through the night from behind me. Actually, yes, you are. He stepped into view, flashlight in hand. 2 uniformed officers behind him. Collins froze, his smirk fading. Merritt, I said, not taking my eyes off Collins. You're late. Story of my life, he said. Collins, you're under arrest for obstruction, extortion, and suspicion of kidnapping. Hands where I can see them. Collins looked annoyed, more than scared. You got no proof of anything. Oh, we've got plenty, Merritt said. Between the ledger, the offshore accounts, and your text threatening a single mother, I'd say you're not walking out of here tonight. Vargo took a step forward, but the younger officer raised his weapon. Don't. For a second, the air hung heavy. Then Collins smiled again. Slow. Deliberate. You boys think you've got this under control, he said. But you have no idea who you're actually dealing with. Merritt cuffed him without a word. As they led him toward the car, Collins turned his head and looked at me. You think she was innocent, he said quietly. But you didn't know your sister like I did. The words stuck to me like oil. I wanted to ask what he meant, but Merritt nudged me toward his car. Let it go, he said. We'll get more out of him at the station. Back at headquarters, Collins sat in an interrogation room, smug and silent. Through the glass, I watched Merritt and another detective question him. He didn't deny the money or the threats. He just kept circling back to the same phrase, "She wasn't who you think she was." Merritt came out an hour later, rubbing the back of his neck. "He's not talking about her disappearance. Keeps saying she ran, like she took something and left." I frowned. "He's lying." "Maybe," Merritt said, "but maybe not entirely. We ran her bank logs. She made a transfer 2 days before she vanished, $10,000 into an account under the name W. Palmer. We're still tracing it." "W. Palmer?" I repeated. "Never heard of him." "Maybe someone helping her," he said. "Maybe someone helping him. Either way, she didn't tell you everything." He looked at me carefully, like he was measuring how much to say. "You sure you want to keep digging, Lieutenant? Sometimes the truth isn't the comfort you think it'll be." I stared through the glass at Collins, still sitting there like he owned the place, smirk fixed. "Yeah," I said. "I'm sure." When I got home that night, I sat in Lana's old room. The same photo of her and Connor was still on the dresser, now taped back together from where it had cracked. I stared at it for a long time before pulling the note from Mill Creek out of my pocket again. She'd written, "Please don't come after him." She knew exactly who he was and what he was capable of. But she had also left me everything I needed to finish what she started. And I wasn't about to stop halfway. The next morning, the station smelled like burnt coffee and frustration. Merritt was pacing in front of the whiteboard, phone pressed to his ear, barking orders at someone on the other end. I leaned against the doorframe, watching through the glass. Collins had been transferred to county lockup overnight, but his smug expression hadn't faded. The man looked like someone who thought jail was just another meeting he could postpone. When Merritt finally hung up, he sighed and rubbed his temples. "The bastard's lawyer is already filing motions. He's got friends with deep pockets." "Of course he does," I said. "People like him don't do business alone." He glanced at me. "In the meantime, there's one more thing. We pulled the GPS data from your sister's car. Last signal came from a wooded area past Mill Creek. It's private land, technically owned by one of Collins's shell companies. So, we're going there." "We're going there," he confirmed. "But you're riding with me this time." I didn't argue. The drive took less than an hour, but the last few miles were rough, narrow dirt roads lined with pines. No cell reception, just the low hum of the tires over gravel. The kind of place where sound didn't travel and secrets didn't echo back. The car rolled to a stop near a small clearing. Ahead, through the trees, was a narrow cabin. Smaller than the one at Mill Creek, darker, almost camouflaged against the forest. No signs of life, but the air had that heavy stillness that told you something had happened there. Merritt stepped out first, flashlight ready. "Stay close," he said. "Wasn't planning a picnic." We approached the front door, which was shut but not locked. Inside, the smell was faint but distinct, decay mixed with bleach. A contradiction that turned my stomach. The living room was empty except for a single armchair and a stack of cardboard boxes. Dust covered everything except the floor where someone had recently walked. "Fresh prints," Merritt muttered, crouching to look. "Small boot size. Maybe a woman's." I felt my chest tighten. "You think it's hers?" "Could be," he said. "Or someone else who wanted us to think that." He moved toward the back room while I checked the boxes. They were full of old receipts, random junk, and a few photographs. Most were of construction sites, men in hard hats and trucks with the Collins Company logo. But one photo made my blood run cold. Lana, standing next to one of the trucks, smiling for the camera. She looked uncomfortable, like the smile was forced. Behind her, barely visible, was Collins. I turned the photo over. On the back, in her handwriting, was a single date, March 12th. The day before she disappeared. "Detective," I called. Merritt came over, looked at the picture, and exhaled. "She was here." "That confirms it." The back room looked like it had been cleared out in a hurry. Shelves empty, papers torn, a broken phone on the floor. Merritt lifted the mattress from the small cot in the corner and found a stain on the wood beneath, faint, circular, dark brown. He looked at me, expression unreadable. "We'll test it. Could be blood. Could be something else." I stared at it too long and something in me slipped. Not panic, but that creeping hum that starts at the back of your skull and spreads until it takes over your breathing. I'd felt it before, in combat. In chaos. The way the mind fractures between focus and fear. The room tilted slightly. Merritt's voice sounded distant. "You okay?" "Yeah, I lied. Just give me a second." I stepped outside, bracing against the cool air, focusing on the sound of the wind. In through the nose, out through the mouth. The same rhythm my therapist had drilled into me after the last deployment. Focus on what's real. Ground yourself. A soft sound broke the rhythm. The faint crunch of leaves behind the cabin. I turned, scanning the tree line. A shadow moved between the trees. "Detective," I called quietly. "We've got company." Merritt was beside me in seconds, hand on his weapon. The shadow shifted again, smaller than an adult, quick. Not running, but watching. "Connor," I said before I could stop myself. Merritt shot me a look. "The kid's in protective custody." I stepped forward anyway. Slowly. The figure darted away, deeper into the trees. Merritt swore under his breath. "Damn it. Stay here." Like hell. We followed. Careful. Silent. The path curved down toward the creek where the trees thinned out. When we reached the bottom, the figure was gone. But there, by the water, something caught the light. A small silver chain. A charm shaped like a compass. I crouched, picking it up. It wasn't mine. The design was newer, thinner. Merritt looked around, scanning the area. "Could be Lana's," he said quietly. "Or someone who wanted to make it look that way." My voice came out tight. "She wore one like this when we were kids. Said it meant she'd always find her way back." He exhaled slowly. "Maybe she still will." We walked further along the bank, the mud soft beneath our boots. Something about the pattern of the footprints ahead caught my eye. 2 sets. One smaller than the other. Both leading toward the water, then disappearing. Merritt crouched beside them. Adult female and someone else. Size 8, maybe 9. Recent. Within 48 hours. He glanced at me. "If she's alive, she's been moving around here." I nodded, but part of me wasn't convinced. The logical part said it was possible. The soldier in me, the one who'd seen too much, knew how often possible turned into denial. We followed the creek a bit longer, until we found an old fire pit, surrounded by beer cans and a tarp. Someone had been camping here. Maybe for days. A folded flannel lay half buried under the tarp. I pulled it out and froze. It was Lana's. I recognized the faded pattern instantly. Blue and gray. Cuffs frayed. One button missing. Merritt took it gently from me, slipped it into an evidence bag. "We'll run DNA," he said. "But I think you already know." I nodded, unable to speak. Back at the cabin, the tech team was arriving. Merritt started directing them. Photos, soil samples, prints. I stayed outside by the jeep, staring at the tree line. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. Somewhere in the distance, a crow called, sharp and lonely. The hum in my head hadn't faded. I pressed my palms against the hood of the car, grounding myself again, focusing on the heat of the metal. I could still see that stain under the cot. Still smell the bleach. Still hear her voice in my head saying, "Please don't come after him." When Merritt came back out, he handed me a small plastic bag. Inside was a torn piece of notebook paper, found wedged behind the filing cabinet. It was Lana's handwriting again. Only 3 words this time. "Trust the river." I turned it over in my hands, the meaning sinking in like water through soil. The creek had always been her escape as kids. When everything got bad at home, she'd run to the water, sit there until the world made sense again. "Trust the river," I repeated quietly. Merritt glanced at me. "You think it's a clue?" "Maybe. Or maybe it's her way of telling me where to look next." He gave me a long look, but didn't argue. "If she left that for you, we'll find what she wanted us to see." He went back to the techs, talking logistics, calling for another sweep. I stayed by the car, clutching that piece of paper like it was the only thing keeping her alive. The forest around us shifted with the wind, branches creaking like old bones. And somewhere beyond the trees, I could swear I heard running water, steady, unbroken, and still moving forward, no matter what tried to stop it. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the flannel shirt, the stain on the floor, and that note, "Trust the river." The words looped in my head like a mission order I hadn't been able to complete. I sat at the kitchen table, maps spread out, tracing the creek that wound north past Mill Creek into the state forest. The old railway cut through there, along with a few cabins used by hunters or off-grid loners. If she was alive and hiding, that's where she'd go. By sunrise, I was already on the road. I didn't tell Merritt. He'd try to stop me. Protocol. Call backup. But this wasn't about procedure anymore. This was personal, and I'd lived too long following orders that only got people buried. The forest was thick this time of year, green and gold and endless. The dirt trail narrowed until it barely looked like a road. I parked and continued on foot, boots crunching through fallen branches. The sound of the river grew louder with every step, steady and cold. Half a mile in, I found something. An old campsite, half collapsed, fire pit cold, but recent. A few empty food cans, a torn tarp, and muddy footprints leading down toward the riverbank. I crouched and studied them. 2 sets again, one smaller, one heavier. And then, faintly, I heard something metallic click behind me. Hands where I can see them. The voice was male, deep, calm. I turned slowly, my palms raised. It was Collins. He looked rougher than before, unshaven, eyes bloodshot, jacket streaked with dirt. He wasn't supposed to be out of jail, but there he was, standing 10 feet away with a revolver pointed at my chest. "You've got a hell of a habit of showing up where you shouldn't," he said. "You're supposed to be in custody," I replied, keeping my voice steady. He grinned. "Money buys fast lawyers. And friends. Merritt's a good cop, but even he can't keep a lock closed when the key belongs to someone else." I took a step forward. "You killed her, didn't you?" He tilted his head, pretending to think. "Killed? No, she was alive the last time I saw her." "Scared?" "Sure." Crying, begging me to make it stop. But breathing. My jaw tightened. "Where is she now?" He shrugged. "You really want to know? Or do you want someone to blame? Because those aren't the same thing." I moved closer, slow and deliberate. "You don't get to talk like you're the victim here." His smirk vanished. "You think I wanted this?" "Your sister poked around where she didn't belong. She was smart, too. Smart for her own good. She thought she could expose people who've been in this game for decades. She was trying to protect her son." "Yeah," he said. "And now look where that got her." That was it. Something in me broke. Before I knew it, I was on him. The gun went off once, the bullet tearing through a tree behind me. I tackled him hard, the weapon skidding across the dirt. We hit the ground in a tangle of limbs and adrenaline. He swung first, wild, angry. I blocked, countered, drove my knee into his ribs. He gasped, tried to grab for the gun again, but I kicked it out of reach. He spat blood and glared up at me. "Go ahead, soldier. Do what you came to do. That's what you people are good at, right? Cleaning up messes." For a second, I almost did. My hand hovered near the gun, my pulse thundering. He wanted me to cross that line, to become the same kind of monster he was. But the training that had built me, the discipline that had kept me alive through years of combat, pulled me back. I grabbed his wrist, twisted hard until he cried out, and yanked his hands behind his back with a zip tie from my pocket. "You don't get to decide how this ends," I said quietly. When Merritt arrived, because yes, I'd finally called him, he didn't even look surprised. He just stared at Collins, cuffed and bruised, and then at me. "Couldn't wait, huh?" "Didn't trust waiting," I said. He sighed. "Fair enough." We drove Collins back to the station, silence heavy in the car. Merritt's jaw worked like he was chewing on words he didn't want to say. Finally, he muttered, "He's not the type to act alone. If he's talking about people in this game, that means a network. And that means your sister got caught in something bigger than this town." "She mentioned offshore accounts," I said. "Maybe she found proof of who those people are." "Maybe," Merritt said. "But she also mentioned the river." "Trust the river, Dot." "She was leaving us a trail," I said. He nodded slowly. "If that's true, she might have hidden something out there. Evidence. Maybe a drive. Something she couldn't keep in the house." We locked Collins in holding again, under tighter supervision this time. He didn't say a word during booking. Just stared at me with that same unnerving calm. As Merritt filled out paperwork, I stood outside the room, watching through the glass. Collins looked up and smiled. Just slightly. "You think this ends with me?" he said through the intercom. "You really don't know what you're walking into." "I know exactly what I'm walking into," I said. "You're just the first stop." He laughed, low and mean. "You sound just like her." I won. The words hit harder than they should have. I left before I could give him the satisfaction of seeing it. Outside, the afternoon light was fading into orange again, dust hanging in the air. I leaned against the hood of my Jeep, letting the silence settle. For the first time since this began, my hands were steady. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was purpose. Merritt joined me a few minutes later. We found something in Collins's truck. A second burner phone. Different number. There's one text from an unknown contact. Timestamped the night Lana disappeared. He showed me the message on his phone. Unknown. Package handled. Riverside cleaned. No trace. Collins, good. She had the drive. Make sure it's gone. I stared at the screen. They used the word package. You think that means her? Merritt frowned. Could mean the